What's up, YouTube? You might be wondering by our little cover photo what we got going on. So, without further ado, let's spin this around and show you what we're working on today. This is a 1940 Ford convertible. So, I've had this car kicking around for quite a while. The story behind this car is it was at a shop in California. The guy didn't get it done. He kind of stripped it. Parts were scattered everywhere, and then he started parting it out. Like he started selling the stuff that was hard to get, the rare parts that you can't buy for this anymore, to try and keep his shop going and alive and everything else. So the owner hired a couple guys to come pick it up. They picked it up, all the parts and pieces they could still find. They brought it here. So can you turn this off? Then we'll talk some more. Okay. That should be okay for a minute. So anyway, they brought the car here. This will happen a lot if you're building cars. You'll end up doing work for somebody that you'll never meet. Like I've never met the owner of this car. I've met kind of middleman. So previous to it coming to me, I believe it's sitting on an Art Morrison chassis. It's a really nice chassis. It's got the Mustang 2 up front, 4-link in the rear, coilovers all the way around. It's got a 383 stroker with a 700 R4, and there's another cool story with the motor, but I'll bring you in closer to look at that, and we'll talk about that. The issue was I don't think they ordered the right chassis. So when it showed up, it didn't fit. So I changed a bunch of stuff around, got the car to fit, moved the firewall back, didn't move the firewall back, built a new firewall that sat an inch and a half further back to fit that motor. This had a lot of old school repairs, like they would dent it in, weld it, lead over top of it. So they pretty much dented the panel to make room for the repair and then brought it back out with lead. So I've gone through and I've taken all that out. It's all back to good steel. The hood was something else that I changed. If you know these 40s, you know the hood, this body line doesn't flow all the way through. They come to right here, and then the hood pitched up. Like the body line made a sharp turn up. So I came in under this body line and took almost 2 inches out of there and laid the nose of this hood down so that body line would flow all the way through. This also has some rotten wood in it. It has wooden supports in the back to hold the body from flopping around. Those all got recut, they're getting replaced. The running boards, they're sitting over here underneath it, you can't see them. They don't fit anymore because this isn't the right chassis for this car. So we got to modify those. I think we're going to use this car to do some metal finishing, some metal shaping, and how to fix blemishes. Like if you have some dents, some ripples, some warps, any of that, we'll cover that in this one. And that way you guys get a little better idea how to take care of that stuff on your project. So I know I'm normally on you guys about do it right, take the time to make sure things fit nice and tight. But what happens if you end up a little gappy? I mean, inevitably it's gonna happen. Nothing can be perfect all the time. Sometimes you're gonna, like there's no way around it. Like these running boards, you can see they're not terrible. This hole is just from the way it was cut, the way it had to be moved in. I'll have to do a little piece right there. But what if you get some gaps in there? Like you're gonna have to weld those up.
So the best way I've found to do this is get a bigger filler rod. Get a filler rod that is pretty close to the same size as your gap. And just take your time and walk through it. I'm gonna try and do another welding video. I don't know how well it's gonna turn out. Just so you guys can kind of see, you're gonna focus your heat more on your rod than you are on your sheet metal. So you're gonna liquefy your rod and then kind of pull back just a little bit to heat up your sheet metal, and it'll suck in there like a magnet. Hopefully it shows up. If nothing else, you'll see just the speed and like how the height your tip needs to be and everything else, just to kind of get it. And it's something you can play with. At the end of the day, you want things tight, but I mean, shit happens. So let's give this a shot. All right, guys, we got our running board all welded out. And I think the focus for this episode, we're just gonna work on this. This, running boards get beat to hell. So this has every issue that you're gonna deal with on a car, just all in one. So, you can see, I just knocked the top off the weld, where we welded everything together. Well, there's a tiny lip, not bad. But that's mostly gonna be just the weld, because when you weld, it shrinks the metal, so it's gonna divot. It's gonna concave like that. So this is gonna be the entire length. And as long as we were somewhat consistent, that should stay somewhat consistent through the whole weld. No big deal. We'll just take a dolly. I need to polish that guy. Anyway, keep your dies polished, or dollies polished, because it'll affect your finish. If you're going for pristine, you want these guys shiny. More than likely, dolly from the front, and we'll hammer from the back. And what that'll do is that'll stretch that back out. So the welding shrunk it, and that little bit of hammering is gonna stretch it back out. It's gonna let it relax, and that'll all lay nice and flat again. Now, I had this kid working for me, and I gave these running boards to him. I said, clean them up, weld all these holes, and we'll go from there. Well, he got this one cleaned mostly up, got the holes welded on both of them, but that's where he kind of stopped. And he did a good job considering his skill level, but he didn't clean up the back. So you can see, like, he didn't clean up the back at all, and I didn't catch it. So, but see that? That's from being dirty. That's more than likely going to be a pinhole. This is going to need to be touched up, because I mean, it's not 100% fused, so that's going to cause issues. That's more than likely a pinhole. The ones that I have touched, that's going to be a pinhole. There's just a lot of touch up for all these little welds that's going to happen. And then will go through it. And like there. You can see it got missed. Didn't get cleaned up and it kind of got missed. There's another one. There's a dozen or so like that through this, so. Get on up there. Okay. So besides that, we also have some pretty big areas that they're gonna need some major movement. Like that one. This whole thing's, it's shaped like the ocean. So first we'll get those welds taken care of, and that way that edge is just done and we can kind of get it straight as we go, because that tails up a little bit right there. It'll give us a straight spot to start from. So let's go over that. Then we'll move on to taking care of all these little welds. I'll do that off camera, actually. And then we'll move on to how to take care of some of these big warps and ripples if you get them in panels. Okay, I'm gonna work with a hammer and dolly, just quickly. You can see go one much right there. Now, everywhere we welded is taken care of. So now we'll dress up this weld a little more, bring it down a little closer, and then from there on we'll still do a little more dolly work. But now we'll hold this on the bottom. We'll switch to a slapper. And what that'll do is when we're hammering, or when we're working it on top, we'll just gently go through like this. Where this covers so much area, it'll hit anywhere it's high, and anywhere it's low, the dolly will push it up. So this will be what we go after next to get our finish right on that. And then if you look here, here's our biggest issue, this guy. So, and then we're low right there where that notch is. Where this one was, we're also low. So something that major, I'll probably throw like a block under it here, just body weight. Shove it down there. Once we get that straight, I'll come in on the back side. I'll weld that a little better, weld that a little better, so hopefully it holds it straight. That's a bolt hole to bolt it to the car, so we can't get too wild. And then either using our body, or maybe we'll stick it in the shrinker. We need to take a shrink there, and we need to take a shrink there. And that should get this whole edge right back where it needs to be. And then we'll move out a little further. We'll start taking care of the ripples. Okay, you can see we got the back straightened out pretty well. Kind of went in with a little more dressing on this weld. Needs a little bit more, and then we can go through, finish that out, and it'll just disappear. Now with all these major warps we got, this is where we're gonna do a little detective work. If you stand back and look at this, see how that kind of divots in, and then comes out and carries back through. Right there, we have some issues. Now, if we look at the other one that we haven't touched yet, it doesn't have that. Like, it's fairly straight. So more than likely, what happened to this to cause all this deformation is they sideswiped this into something, like a pole or a tree or something, and it pushed that in. And when it pushed that in, instead of creasing it or doing anything like that, it pushed that roll back, which made all that pop up and made everything else kind of warp. So now our focus is going to be getting this curve moved back out so that it carries all the way across. So we're going to go from here back to about here. We're going to start working that back out this way. I was hoping to do this all with hand tools, and you can. I mean, you can take your dollies and you can just start beating the hell out of this, and you can get that move back forward. But for the time that we have on this car before it goes to paint, I don't have time to do that. So I'm going to grab the plenishing hammer, get it set up right over here where it's easier to get to, and we'll move this with the plenishing hammer. Okay, first thing we need to do is determine the radius of our bend. So grab your gauge set, radius gauge set. This one's from JMR Tool. It's the same place that I got the plenishing hammer, and if you're looking for one, they're an amazing machine. So that is a 1.5. Might be what I have in there actually. Oh, there it is. So there's the corresponding die. It's simple as pop the old one out, drop the new one in, and there we go. And then we'll work this. We'll try and work this so that we're pulling this back down, and then we'll put a flat die in, and we'll come back over the top to try and push it out. We'll just kind of gradually try and work that towards the outside. So. See by eyeballing it and just our reflection in general, we're getting closer. So I've been working this out to the edge. This is bowed, obviously, but we have this big ripple right in the middle that we need to get rid of. This swoops down. And it's a gradual downward slope or swoop that comes back to about here, and then we're flat from there back. So we're gonna need to shrink this now. We got to get rid of that giant high spot. It's a lot of shrinking. Now, that's a shrinking disc, and this is gonna be more than that can handle. So let me get the torch set up with a brazing head, and we'll get this shrunk back down to where we can work with it again. All right, you can see we went through, we did a line of shrinks just below this body line here. Then I also went through and I did some shrinks on this edge. If you remember, this was humped up by about a 1/2 inch, somewhere thereabouts. And this is where we're at now. I see I'll probably need to take a couple shrinks there. Not bad though. But we're way better. I might pull another couple shrinks up here. Now you might be saying that we're too low, we've gone too far, but that's okay. When you're doing this, shrink more than you need. It is a lot harder to get metal to shrink than it is to get metal to stretch. We can go through with a hammer and dolly, and you probably noticed when I had those cherry red, I started tapping where it was cherry, and that was just to get the steel to shrink in on itself a little more before it was quenched, just because we had so much to deal with. That's no big deal. So we'll throw the dolly underneath this now. We'll tap around these edges, and what that'll do is, now that that's been heated red hot, it's going to be a little bit softer than this out here. So by tapping around that edge over a dolly, it's going to force that material back into the center, and it's actually going to give us a little bit more shrink. But that'll level all those little divots out, and then we'll just go through and do some planishing and some hammer and dolly, and just the little bit of body work it takes to get everything flattened back out, it'll stretch it out to where it's going to be pretty close. So here we are. I cleaned off the die cam, and you can see I've gone over this a couple more times with a hammer and dolly. That edge is now back where it's supposed to be. We're straight down that edge again. If we throw this up here, remember what we started with? This is where we are now. These welds are just not cooperating. I ground them down with a flap disc, and I got a little carried away. So a lot of those low spots are little grinder divots. But for the most part, this is pretty sweet. I'm not going to take it any further than this, because remember I said this gets covered in rubber. So this is more about modifying it so it fits the car, getting rid of the damage from whatever wreck it was in, and getting rid of those big ripples, and we've accomplished that. So this is plenty good to get rubber glued onto it. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how to deal with some major issues in your body work. like big ripples or long welds where you'll end up with that belly. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Like and subscribe. If you want to see more on how to finish this out a little better, let me know down below, because I think being able to shrink the right amount is probably one of the most important things that you could learn how to do when it comes to fixing up old cars. So until next time, we'll see you guys later.